Exercise 7 in Chapter 14 is asking you to give the IUPAC name for some esters. Remember, an ester is when you have a carbon double bonded to an oxygen, single bonded to an ether. So that's a single bond to an oxygen, single bond to another carbon. That, altogether, is an ester. Notice that we're going to have two carbon chains here. The carbon chain that has the double bond is going to be named as the backbone. And the carbon chain that doesn't have the double bond to oxygen is going to be named as a branch. So this one's going to end in YL. The backbone is going to be end in the suffix for an ester, which is O8. All right, so we'll see that here. Now, in this molecule, the backbone is the carbon chain that has the double bond. So that's going to be our backbone. Let's name that first. Here we only have one carbon, and so the prefix is going to be meth. Outside of the functional group, and the only bond that's outside of the functional group is this one right here. Outside of that functional group, there are only single bonds, all single bonds, and so the infix is going to be AN. Any double bonds that are outside of the function, or that are in the functional group, are going to be represented by the suffix, which represents the functional group. So methane. Now the functional group is carbon, double bonded to oxygen, single bonded to oxygen, single bonded to carbon. So it's right there. That's our functional group. And that is an ester. So the suffix for an ester is O8. So we're dealing with a methanoate. That takes care of the backbone. Now, let's think about the branch. The branch is on the other side of the oxygen. That would be this right here. In that branch, we have one carbon. The prefix for one carbon is meth. So the prefix for that branch would be meth. And because it's being named as a branch, a carbon branch, immediately after that prefix comes YL. So we can take that branch name, bring it in front of the backbone name. Let me just try it again. Bring it in front of the backbone name, so meth, and then YL. And the name for the full molecule would be methyl methanoate. Methyl methanoate. Here, we have two carbon chains again. The carbon chain with the double bond is going to be named as the backbone. So in this backbone, we have 1, 2, 3 carbons. So the prefix is going to be prop. Between those carbons, we have all single bonds, and so the infix is going to be AN. Finally, if you look at the molecules, or the elements that are not, if you look at the elements that are not carbon, you'll see that they represent an ester. A carbon double bonded to oxygen, single bonded to an ether. And so the suffix for an ester is O8. So the backbone name is going to be propanoate. Now we have another carbon chain, the carbon chain that doesn't have the double bond. This is on the other side of that, the ether, oxygen. And here we only have two carbons. In this carbon chain we have two carbons. So the prefix is going to be F. The carbon chain that doesn't have the double bond to oxygen is named as a branch, and so immediately after that prefix is going to come YL. We take that branch name and we put it in front of the backbone name, and we get ethyl propanoate. Ethyl propanoate would be the name of this molecule. Esters, by the way, are responsible for a lot of the smells that we have, especially for fruits, things like the smell of oranges or pineapples or bananas. Even the smell of roses comes from esters, like we're naming here. Here again we have two carbon chains. The carbon chain that has the double bond to the oxygen is the backbone, so let's name that first. that has 2 carbons, so the prefix is going to be F. In between the carbons, there's only a single bond, and so the infix will be AN. And if you look at the elements that are not carbon or hydrogen, they represent an ester. That's a carbon double bonded to oxygen, single bonded to an ether. That is, single bonded to an oxygen that's single bonded to another carbon. And the suffix for an ester is O8. So the name for that backbone is going to be ethanoate. The carbon chain, we have another carbon chain on the other side of that oxygen with all the single bonds, and that is going to be named as a branch. So here we have a total of 3 carbons. The prefix for having 3 carbons is prop. And because that's named as a branch, immediately after that prefix comes the suffix YL. So the name for that branch is propyl. To get the name for the whole molecule, put the branch name in front of the backbone name, and you have propyl ethanoate. The name for this molecule would be propyl ethanoate.